Good morning and welcome to Faith Family United Church of Christ Sunday morning Bible study. We're going through a series we're calling Bible 101, in which we go through each and every book of the Bible and hit the highlights of the major themes of each book, so we can understand what's in each book and better understand the Bible as a whole and not just breaking it down into each individual word. So today we're in week 13 and we are in the book of Job. As you can see, this is the Old Testament. We're still in the Old Testament. We've already done the books of the law, the books of the historical books, and now we're in the prophetic books, sometimes called wisdom books. We're beginning those, and we'll go through Job today, and Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastic, and Psalm of Solomon, or Song of Songs sometimes. These are poetic books, or as people know, Psalms is like it's usually sung to a poem sung to a stringed instrument. So these are, like I say, these are poems. Job is especially interesting. I think it's called what we call today prose, because it tells a story. And so let's go ahead and open up with Job, and a little bit of background information with Job. The setting is the time frame. It doesn't really give a time frame out of the text, but through the language and the social structure within the story itself, we would probably date the story to be around the patriarchs, and that would be around the time of Noah or Abraham, pre formation of Israel, pre Egyptian story when the Israelites go down to Egypt and end up staying down there and becoming slaves. So this is about that time frame. So we would put it in about the time frame of Genesis, the middle of Genesis, with all the stories of Abraham and Judah and all of those stories. Like I said, it is a poem, and what we get is this idea that the whole story revolves around grappling with the question of theodicy. Now, theodicy is just a fancy term for the question, why do innocent people suffer? Why do bad things happen to good people if God is so loving? So that's the whole story, and the whole poem kind of revolves around that theme. Interestingly, the word Job, or the name Job, in Hebrew means one that is persecuted. Okay, so we can see this through the story. When we get to the story, you can see how he could feel persecuted, and this is the Hebrew tradition, is that this is Job is one that is persecuted. Of course, he's persecuted by Satan, but God allows it to happen. And but this is an interesting thing, and this is where I kind of lead, where the story was originally who is actually the enemies of God. Because as we'll see here in a second, the name Job could mean enemy of, or my enemy. So who is Job the enemy of, if that's the case? Enemy of God, or what? So, or is the enemy of Satan? And then, of course, the name Satan actually is which is Ha in Hebrew, Ha, Satan, and Satan means the adversary. And this is the adversary of God, one who questions God. And so are we the enemy of the adversary, or Job, is he the enemy of the adversary, or is he the enemy of the God? But like I said, the tradition, the Hebrew tradition, is that Job is the one being persecuted, and so the meaning of his name would be the persecuted one. So while Job is a story, like I said, it's also a poem, and the people that speak in a poetic form, in a a Semitic Hebrew form. Let's go with that. The story begins by introducing Job and his family. He's an upright person. He's an upright man in the sight of God, and he's always praising and doing what God commands. The story quickly changes direction. It takes us to the heavenly realm in which Hasatan, Satan, and God are talking, and like I said, Satan is actually the adversary. So God's adversary, and they're talking about humanity. They're talking about Job and how upright he is. And Satan says questions about why people are devoted to God. And so there's kind of the beginning of this, want to look at it kind of a cosmic battle between good God and adversary, Satan, evil, and how they're going to allow people to make their own choice on which way they're going to go. And which is interesting, because if you look at Job and you say, how can you not understand we have free will from Job, when that's kind of the whole story, is a human being's devotion to decide to worship God or decide to curse God. So Job is a good example of our own free will. So Satan contends that the only reason why people show love and devotion to God is because God gives them rewards and treats them kindly. And that's the only time that they love God. And so God gives Satan permission. He says, no, they love me because... And so God gives Satan permission to go and to look at Job and to actually cause tragedy in his life. The first thing that, first to his possessions, so he takes all, basically Satan comes down and he takes all of Job's possessions away from him. And this includes his family, has his family killed off, and has all his possessions taken away, and Job is left basically penniless, sitting in the dirt. And then God allows Satan to actually affect his health, and so Job develops sores all over his body, and he's mourning his tragic life. But God does not allow Satan to take his life. That was the one thing that God didn't allow. So, through all of this turmoil and everything, Job never curses God. He still stays faithful to God. But he does curse the day he was born. He curses himself. Woe is me, kind of thing. So at this point in the story, it's basically a story, and the three friends of Job enter the story, and that's when the true poetry of the story begins, and they speak in poetry to Job. And they try to give him advice on why his life has been filled with all this tragedy. Okay, the first friend suggests that the reason is because his life is in turmoil, is because he has sinned somehow. He has caused God to punish him in some way because of his sin, and that he should confess his sin before God, and God will restore his life to what it used to be. But Job insists that he is innocent. He has not sinned. He has not cursed God. He has always been devoted to God. And he continues what seems to be a continual complaining, almost like, this is my life, woe is me. But in fairness to Job, okay, Job is trying to grapple with all these things that he is encountering. And he's trying to figure out why these things are happening to me. So he's kind of running them over and over in his brain, but of course he's doing it out loud and in writing form here. But he's going over it and over it, and it might sound like complaining, but you can imagine if you were in a situation like that, you too would be going, this has happened to me, and now this has happened to me, and this has happened to me. What's going on in my life? So it's kind of like him talking to himself and trying to figure out what's happening to his life more than it is woe is me kind of thing. So, second friend comes in. He suggests that that Job deserved this punishment. Again, he sinned, and that's God punishing him. So all these things, these terrible things that happened, you must have really done something wrong, Job. So why don't you confess your sin? And once again, God will restore you, or at least he will absolve you. Again, Job insists that he's innocent. He has not sinned. He is righteous. And he continues on with his woe is me's, trying to figure out his the reason for his life. Come in the third friend. The third friend suggests that Job is undermining the religion itself by not admitting to his sins, that he should confess his sins and God will restore him. Actually, he says that he should confess his sins and curse God and die. But that's a little bit later. But here again, we have another one. And this is the mindset. And I think this is the whole idea behind Job, is the mindset that if something wrong happens in my life, it's because I did something wrong. Kind of like the idea of karma. Karma is going to get you. If you reap what you sow, kind of thing. But it's not always so. Why do innocent people why does a family of four driving in their minivan get sideswiped by a drunk driver? How is that their fault? They're punished for something that wasn't their fault. So why does God allow those things to happen? And that's where we are here in Job. And that's where people will come in, well, something terrible happened. You must have done something terrible in your life. And Job, the story of Job is saying it doesn't have to be that way. Things happen because, well, they happen. So, like I said, the dialogue goes back and forth between the three friends and Job. And like I said, one of the friends gives the advice that tells Job to just outright curse God and die. Curse God and your life will be over. Your turmoil, your tragedy will be over. So, of course, Job does not do that. He does curse his the day he was born, but he does not curse God. And then Job continues to profess his innocence. Enter a young man. Another man comes in, young man, and he's going to give advice. And it's interesting because I think that the idea here is Job is an older man. His friends are older men, and this is the way they believe, right? Your bad things happen because you did bad things. You're rewarded for doing good things. And so that's the whole religious system. And in comes this young man, and he says, no, things happen because things happen. Things happen because we think we're self-righteous. he comes in and he basically condemns Job for saying that he is completely innocent. And the young man tries to give a new perspective on who God is. And I think that's a lesson for us today in the church, is that we get so tied up in our traditions and the way we've done things. Why do we do it that way? Because we've always done it that way. But it might not necessarily be a true understanding of who God is. And so young people come in with these different ideas and these different perspectives, and they say, no, God is like this. And now we're like, oh, you're an evil person because you don't believe in the traditions. But yet, after this young man is finished, it's kind of obvious that he has spoken for God, because he is telling them a different way of understanding God. And it's not this reward or punishment system that religion has been encapsulated in. So he addresses, he talks to the friends, he apologizes, what it seems, for being a young man and talking. He said he's let them talk, he's let them go on, and now he would like to be heard. And he talks about God, and he talks about God's greatness, and he talks about God's majesty, and he talks about God's righteousness. And basically he says, you know, who are we to try to compare ourselves in righteousness to God, who is righteousness? And so the idea of self-righteousness, he kind of condemns or rebukes this idea of self-righteousness. I'm righteous and I'm doing the right thing. So in a way, he's rebuking Job for claiming to be righteous and to be fully innocent. So as he gets done, he kind of sets the record straight about righteousness and who is righteous, and only God is righteous. And so we can't compare ourselves to God as human beings. We are created, he is the creator, and we cannot be righteous. We can only share in what God allows us to share, his righteousness. So, okay. Okay, so finally, guess who comes in? God. He finally comes into the story near the end, and he speaks. He adds to the discussion, and he speaks to Job, and we hear the famous verse, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth?" And it's kind of a little bit of an echo of what the last friend was saying. He's saying, God created everything, and you don't know all of what has been created. And so when we see something that's a tragedy, we think tragedy because it's in ourselves, but in the big picture, in the whole of all of creation, you don't understand it. And so just like we don't understand if we have a thunderstorm and it rains and we think, oh my gosh, our day is ruined, but yet we need the water. We've come to understand those things, and maybe eventually we'll come to understand tragedy as well. But in the end, after God speaks to Job, and he basically teaches Job, and Job is humbled. And he learns to be content with a life, knowing that rewards and tragedies will come in life, and this does not represent God's love for each and every individual. But there's a bigger plan. We're part of a bigger plan. And so while we try to avoid tragedies, they'll still come, even if we think we're innocent or we are innocent. So in the end, the question of why does God allow tragedy to happen to the innocents Why are bad things happen to good people? Who are we to question God? That's the answer. No real answer like this is the reason or that's the reason. It's kind of like, that's life. That's life. And I love Job. It wrestles with this idea of trying to be good and why are we being good? When our life goes bad, the world tells us to, hey, just be bad and go full in. But yet, we're not supposed to. We're supposed to still love God because God loves us. And the things that happen to us are not necessarily God's doing, but because of other people's doing. And so that's life. Any questions? You got a question?
I just want to say something about my study of Job is that we don't know that he was Hebrew. As a matter of fact, he may not have been an Israelite. And so he didn't know the ways of God as the Israelites did.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, when things started happening to him, he just wished he would just go to sleep forever.
Yes.
But by the end, Job realizes that there's more to life to death than death. And he's come full circle. And also, what happened to Job, and I think at that time, friendship was a luxury because slaves didn't have friends. And the way he talked about going to sleep was a lot like slaves. The master controlled the day, but they controlled the night when they slept, right? So I think that's how Job kind of saw God. But by the end, he's kind of come full circle. And the way he talks about, and you didn't touch on this, but in the book of Job, he talks about welcoming the stranger. There's a lot of talk about accepting people that are different from you, or not necessarily different, but welcoming the stranger. His journey is a lot like ours as Christians, as we wrestle not necessarily with the horrible things that happen to him, but the things in our world and reconciling different things. And at the end, death is not an escape. Death is a reward. And I think that's something that Job learned and that we can take from his story as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of, and I didn't touch on this, but at the very end, after all is said and done, Job he gets twice as much. His family grows. He gets a new family. His family grows. His possessions grow, and it's kind of like on the other side of tragedy, there is reward. And it might not be in this world, but when we are with God, our rewards will be even better, bigger, and our life will be more fuller. I think that's important. Our lives will be fuller on the other side of tragedies. So, all right. We'll see you next time.